banjo style. If you played that kind of music, you were called a rag picker. Scott began making up ideas at the piano, exploring this world of ragtime music on his own. The result, in which the left hand played the stomping rhythms and the right hand played the syncopated melodies, was the exciting music that is known throughout the world as ragtime. Scott settled in St. Louis, supporting himself as a professional musician, moved on to Chicago, where he learned to play the cornet and began conducting his own small bands, and finally landed in Sedalia, Missouri, where he became a star attraction at a place called the Maple Leaf Club. It was there that Scott composed one of the most famous ragtime songs ever published, the Maple Leaf Rag. And then one day, while Scott was working at the club, a bearded stranger walked up to the piano.
My name is John Stark. I think it's time we met. You know, I own a music store in town, but I've started publishing some music, too. I'd like to publish some of yours. I'd like to talk to you about your Maple Leaf Rag. Now, I've been giving this a lot of thought, and I'll give you $50 for your Maple Leaf Rag. On top of that, I'll give you a royalty for every piece of music we sell.
Well, I sure do want to thank you, Mr. Stark.
Don't thank me. You just write the music, and I'll publish it. You know, by the time we're done, there won't be a person in Sedalia doesn't know the name of Scott Joplin. Sedalia, St. Louis, Kansas City, or the whole state of Missouri.
Well, before long, requests for the Maple Leaf Rag started coming into the Stark store from as far away as Chicago and even New York. In just a few months, thousands of copies had been sold, and there was no sign of stopping. All his life, Scott had dreamed of writing music which would capture the fancy of the American public. Now, he had his first hit, and when the royalty money started arriving, he realized that he would no longer have to earn his living as a working, wandering pianist, but could devote his time to teaching and composing music. From Sedalia, by way of St. Louis and Chicago, Scott finally moved to New York City. All the while, of course, he was teaching music students and writing music, such as popular ballads, marches, waltzes, and a whole bushel full of his favorite ragtime tunes. People in the music business began calling him the king of the ragtime writers. In 1908, John Stark, by then a big-time music publisher in New York, published a ragtime music instruction book written by Scott called School of Ragtime. As busy as he was with his teaching, composing, and occasional playing, Scott never lost sight of his boyhood dream, to write an American opera. Actually, he had written one which had failed, but he was determined more than ever to write another one that would succeed.
Tree. Monisha? Why not? Tree, Monisha. Tree, Monisha.
Oh, heaven's sake, Scott. Why, it's almost done, and you've been working all night long. You have students to teach in the morning.
I've got it.
You've got what?
Come here. Come here, Lottie. Lottie, there are three wonderful things in my life. Ragtime, you, my patient, loving wife, and Tree Monisha.
Tree Monisha.
It's what I'm going to call my new opera.
Tree Monisha.
I have it all figured out. Now, the story takes place on a plantation. The two main characters are a poor black couple named Ned and Monisha. Now, they have no children. Then one day, they find a baby girl under a tree and adopt it. So they call her Tree Monisha. Well, Tree Monisha grows up to be a healthy child who becomes the only one of her people to be educated. And in time, she leads all black people to their freedom. But first, she has to overcome a group of black sorcerers who practice voodoo. Now, these villains want to kill her. But by the end of the opera, Tree Monisha is triumphant, and her people learn the meaning of education, justice, and equality. What do you think?
Well, Scott, I think that's a beautiful story.
Scott kept busy teaching his students during the day. then would work long hours into the nights completing the words and music for his opera. Now, it costs a great deal of money, thousands and thousands of dollars, even back then, to produce a professional play or opera. And though Scott had attained a certain measure of success, he just didn't have much money. Of course, one of the reasons for this was that many of his students were poor and couldn't pay for their lessons. And knowing what it was to be poor and to love music, he just went on teaching without receiving any payments. Well, Scott's efforts to find backers, people who would invest money to put on his opera, just didn't work out.
Why don't you write some simple songs, Joplin? Those I could publish easily. But this premonition stuff, it's crazy. People won't understand it.
How much money do you think I can make with music like this? Why, I'd lose my shirt. Look, don't talk to me. Talk to a producer.
Look here, Joplin. You may think you're hot stuff with your maple leaf rag, but nobody nowadays is interested in opera, especially when it's written by somebody like you.
Scott Joplin went ahead on his own, renting a hall and hiring a group of singers to perform his opera. He had no extra money for the special lighting needed in a stage performance, and hiring an orchestra was also very expensive, so he had to forget about that, too. Well, in spite of all the problems, Premonitia received its special first-time performance in Harlem in New York City in 1915, and the audience was mostly black. Premonitia was a failure. And what hurt Scott most of all was that he was turned down by his own people.
Don't worry, honey. There will be other times and other operas, and Premonitia will have a second chance.
Not while I'm alive. Not anymore.
They were both right. Premonitia did get a second chance. But long after 1917, the year in which Scott died, a lonely, disappointed patient in a mental hospital. When Scott Joplin died, many people thought that Ragtime would die with him. And though it did fade off for a time, it has come back strong in recent years. Scott's music was used as background for an Oscar-winning Best Motion Picture of the Year. Music publishers today are very busy making Ragtime available to the public. Ragtime is appearing on concert stages all over the country. And just as Scott Joplin once dreamed, his rags and those of his fellow ragtime pioneers are being studied and regarded as seriously as other American concert music. And Premonitia, the dream of his life, was revived in Atlanta, Georgia in 1972 and received a standing ovation, the applause Scott had hoped for but never received in Harlem in 1915. And then in 1974, the Houston Grand Opera revived Premonitia again. Later, it was taken to the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., and after that was performed on Broadway in New York City. When Scott Joplin sat at the piano as a small boy, he dreamed of the day when the world would remember his music. Well, today his musical themes and songs, especially his happy ragtime tunes, are being played, whistled, and hummed in countries all over the world. And Scott Joplin remains the first and most famous ragtime king.